My name is Maggie Nelson. I am the Director of Infrastructure Engineering here at GitHub. I'm here. Thank you. I'm a little nervous. I haven't given a talk to a group of ladies this large before, so more intimidating than conferences full of non-ladies. I'm here to kind of talk about my personal career path and how I got here, where I am now, and kind of touch on key factors that helped me get here, how I look at my career, my jobs, what I look for, and when I decide to pursue a new opportunity. Sorry, I'm getting used to this, so welcome. I want to start with the early years. We kind of talk in Silicon Valley sometimes about this kind of cliche idea of the guy who learns about computers in his basement, takes them apart, and learns how to code when they're 12 and starts Facebook or whatever, I don't know. I feel like I was a little bit lucky that I did have exposure to computers as a teenager. I was about 17, so not the 12-year-old thing, but pretty early on. I was able to kind of play around, make some websites. I still heart GeoCities and missed it. I think it kind of allowed me to look at what I want to do in college. And I didn't know right away that I would go and study computer science or computer engineering. I went to college wanting to study math. I thought that's what I was going to do. As the internet was kind of booming and being awesome around me, I realized that that's probably what I want to do. I started having a lot of internships and jobs. Actually, I was one of the kids who actually had to work through college. So having some HTML skills was really big back then. You're like, whoa, bold tags. Apparently we use CSS for that now, so I don't know. I ended up having a couple jobs as a web developer, very internship, junior level, entry level jobs, but they did give me a good amount of exposure to kind of enforce in me that I actually do want this as a career. So it happened early enough that I was able to switch to a computer science degree and graduated with it from New York University, which was pretty cool. So by then I've already had a little bit of experience, and speaking of luck, one of the first projects I ever worked on was in 2001, worldseries.com website. So it was kind of weird because I didn't even know anything about baseball back then. I was like, what is this double play? I don't know. And not because I'm a girl, it's because I'm not from this country. So I just want to make that clear. I worked on this project, and what it taught me is that there's this thing that's building products for thousands, if not millions of people. And this is in 2001, when that was still really hard project, and people had Hello World websites that were still under construction, So having the opportunity to work on this project and seeing a bunch of people are tuning in to watch people throw balls around and catch them in the correct order. So it was kind of great. The technology I used was awesome. It was a lot of technology we still use. It was very low level back then. We didn't have the fancy, Ruby and cloud computing. You had to decide what you're going to put in your data center. It's, not something that you do that actively. Well, I do now, but not that actively anymore. So I did take that as kind of an opportunity to think more broadly about what I want to do. I also, the project was really small, but I knew from the start that I kind of wanted to work with teams more. It became very apparent that to take on big challenges, you have to not work alone. The whole model of I'm working in the basement by myself and make Facebook is, I don't know why I'm picking on Facebook. It's fine. I use it. We all use it. It's nice. But that model doesn't work. You have to work with other people, and there's ways to work with other people. So one of my first actual full-time jobs after college was at Amazon. And I know they're getting pretty bad press this week. But this was 2003. So let's jump in our time machine. It was pretty interesting back then. For 2003, they were pretty revolutionary in a lot of ways from technology standpoint. They were able to have a website that had a lot of uptime. And more importantly, for me, they were able to have a company of, I think, about 800 developers working together on one website. It's like, how do you even accomplish this? So that's where I first learned about things like, version control, and we used CVS, so like we all tried to forget those years, but it was pretty good. So I learned about that. I learned about how to work with other people from technology standpoint, but also how to kind of work in a company. Amazon had this idea of like 2 pizza teams that like people still sometimes use, where no project should be bigger than in the amount of people that you could feed with 2 pizzas. I don't know. That's not the point of this talk. You can all look it up online. But it was kind of interesting. So after working at Amazon, I also started thinking that what I want to do personally is kind of work on products for people. So like selling things is great, whatever, but let's actually focus on things that people use. The human interactions, like the Amazon comments, are very interesting. So I went to work for a small company called Community Connect Inc. It had a few products, one of them being blackplanet.com, which was a social network. That was a competitor to Friendster and MySpace, to give you kind of like a time frame of what was going on. It was really great to kind of learn what it takes to make a super fast, scalable website for people using a website in ways that they haven't before. Like people making connections, people making these, like, well, if I have 6 friends and those 6 friends have each 6 friends, then we suddenly have this great circle of things, and our database breaks because it can't handle the queries. So, this is a company that had figured it out. This is where I was exposed to a lot of concepts like horizontal scaling. So it's like, maybe don't just buy a more faster server, just buy a bunch and connect them together somehow. Just be creative, think about problems out of the box. This is kind of the new world of technology and internet. Like, what can we do? Like, we're not shipping a product by actually like sending it via mail to somebody. We're just putting it on the internet where everybody can use it. So it was a great place to learn technology. I worked with an excellent team of people. And learned a lot. And then, it was about 2006. So that's when I started kind of thinking about, like, okay, where is my career going? I've been at this company for a couple of years. What do I want to do next? So thinking about it really hard. And like in retrospect, I sound really smart, but like, it's kind of happened around me too. 2006 was a great year. It was, 2008 was the market crash. 2006 was the years leading up to a market crash. So like, recognizing opportunities came very much in handy there. So I wanted to work for a company that didn't necessarily build their own product like Amazon or Community Connect. I wanted to work for an agency and kind of learn what it's like to build products for hire. Like, what is different there? So the amazing opportunity there was that the agency, this was in New York City. So think of like all the movies you've seen about New York City with like money raining out of the sky, people drinking martinis. Like, it wasn't like that, but it was kind of like that. So, we worked with Nokia, who recognized in their wisdom that they're a giant company and it's very difficult for them to quickly build products. So they reached out to an agency like ours and said like, hey, we need this and we have all the money because it's 2006 and maybe it's kind of a pet project or a hobby project, but that's okay. So, at the company, we were able to say, at our agency, we were able to say, well, this is great. We have this opportunity as engineers to build something really great and not worry about, maybe budget so much, which, maybe we should have in the past. But, so we had this freedom and this kind of youthful, optimism about building amazing products. So we built the OV store and its predecessor, Mosh, which was Mobilize and Share, which were they were Nokia's app stores, kind of like the Apple App Store, but for Nokia phones, back when Nokia phones were still thing people used, unfortunately. I have a very soft spot for Nokia in my heart. It's, oh, you all had those little like phones, right? Yeah, all right. So Nokia was great, and because it was kind of a place. It's just going back to like recognizing opportunities. From personal perspective, I knew that we were just the right size where. Myself, who was kind of going from like in 2001 being a junior developer, by 2006 I have seen a bunch of things, have gained some experience. I was kind of ready to take on a more leadership role. I ended up being an architect for the project, a technical architect. I also had a lot of experience mentoring people who joined the project, which I found really rewarding, and something that you don't always know you would like until you try it. So if any of you need to be mentored, just let me know. It was a really, really fun project that allowed a lot of opportunities, not just from technical perspective, but actually thinking of myself, how much of an impact I want to have on the projects that I'm building. So this was, I worked at the agency until 2010, and I was kind of ready to make a change in my life, not just in my career. So I lived in New York City back then. I decided that it's time for entering Silicon Valley. So I moved out here. I worked for Flickr in 2010 for about a year and a half. It was really good, and it was not extremely challenging at the time. It was in 2010. It was like pre-Marissa Mayer years. But post like the original Flickr years, so it's kind of a dip. So I learned a lot, and the people were perfectly nice, but I felt like I wasn't really growing as a how do I work with people and perspective, and also from technology perspective. I felt like I was hired for my skills and not given room to grow. So you kind of have to, at that point, be true to yourself. It's very important. Don't give up on who you are for any reason, unless it's criminal, but so be true to yourself. So I was ready to leave Flickr, so I was and kind of try on like the more startup approach of what's going on in Silicon Valley. So I was easily poached by a small startup called Findery. It was started by Katerina Fake, who originally started Flickr. I was the second engineer there, and was able to have the experience of kind of seeing a startup from beginning to end, have a lot of impact from technology perspective. And as the project progressed and was not reaching perhaps our overly optimistic growth goals, I was kind of running out of technical things to do. I'm kind of a specialist in building scalable products, and there was just not enough volume to push it even further. So I ended up taking actually a lot more management, take a more management role at the company. I started leading a team of engineers, being their manager, working with product teams a lot more to actually talk about what we're building. Product team, I don't know why I said team, team. And eventually I got promoted to VP of engineering, which was pretty cool. I was proud of myself. I don't know how humble I am. Like people always say, like, I'm a humble person. I'm like, am I? I don't know. Findery was great. And, but once again, like, I feel like at some point, like you reach a point in your job when you're like, okay, I feel like I have grown as much as I can here, so you kind of have to move on. So growing is very important to me. So very fortunately, that was about the time that GitHub was looking for new people and reached out to me. So this ends up with me being here. I am the Director of Infrastructure Engineering here. And I feel like I'm at a place where all my experiences and knowledge, both from technology perspective and people perspective, has come to this amazing result where I have the ability to work with a team that manages the infrastructure for this company, which therefore manages the infrastructure for developers around the world. It's kind of mind-blowing, but also really interesting. So Rachel asked me as I was going through this presentation, which is, Maggie, like this is really a lot of management now, like what about, like, are you leaving some of the technology behind because you're kind of a directing role? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I think to direct this properly, you really need to know your stuff. And speaking from kind of the growth perspective, A lot of my experience have to do with web development, but not necessarily infrastructure building itself. So it's a great place to kind of know enough to not break anything, and be able to work with people who are extraordinarily smart and kind of know what's important to learn and continue learning. So I feel like I'm in a great place. I plan on being here for a good amount of time, until problems that we're solving here are not hard anymore. And then we'll have to talk. But I think GitHub is a great place. I think we have a lot of problems to solve, both from our product perspective. We have an opportunity to make great social impact on our company, Silicon Valley as a whole, the world of software in general. I think we can be the wave. I feel very optimistic about this. And thank you all for being here.